Hello and welcome to Beyond the Mist. My name is Daniel. I am the Game Master for the Mistworld podcast, and we're just doing a bit of a deep dive into each episode, the thinking process that went into each one, and how I planned them. Now this is for episode 2. Now I mentioned before that I have plot points for each one of my each session, and for this one the point was that they had to reach Bastion. They had to reach the capital of the area in order to be set up to get some information. Now, when they start the episode, they're on the city of Delonde, which I described as being a city of labyrinths, and that had inspired me to say that there would be miners around who go underground. They're looking for a way down onto the surface. Now, when I came up with that, I wanted to make them visually distinctive, and not sure if you know the history, but when they were plague doctors, one of the reasons why they had that kind of beak-like apparatus on their masks was because one of the beliefs at the time was that you became sick from bad smells, and so those beaks would have perfumes or nice-smelling things in order to keep away the bad smells that would make people sick. And I thought that could work with these miners. I'm not going to fall into that trip again. I should be calling them people who work in mines after that episode, but we're going to... You know who I'm talking about. They are visually distinctive with those masks on. The masks also help cover up the scarring that can come from minor contact with the mists, and this really shows that there are people who are desperately looking for a solution to the space problems that they're starting to have with being above the clouds and, in a growing population, but having not much space to be able to feed them or clothe them. Now, after Denny's comment, she mentioned that in an early episode, that she was looking for a way to upgrade the Beetle. So I decided I was going to put a way for them to do that when they left, by having this dungeon turn up in mid-flight. So I was kind of counting on at least Danny, if not one of the other players, to go, let's go down and see what we can find. So I had, again, this imagery of normally this is not an accessible area, but much like a tide, the mist has been pushed back by the wind, and now this area is accessible temporarily. When I do dungeons, I like creating an environmental effect to them. So in this case, it was the possibility of the mist coming back in and possibly cutting them off and needing to find a solution for that. I've also used rising water. I've had them being on a lava planet that can explode. There's all kinds of environmental effects you can include in your games just to add that timer so the players aren't just going at their leisure, going door by door and taking whatever time they want to. Instead, they have to be conscious of eventually this place is going to become too dangerous to survive, and you're going to need to find a way to pull out. So when I created this dungeon, initially it was just going to be a 5-room dungeon. So I decided the first room, close at the front, the main thing I wanted them to get, which was a way to weaponize the shiny beetle and having that lightning cannon up front. And then having a look at thinking about if people are living there, what do they need to live? So having the bedroom quarters, canteen, toilets, places like that, so that way they can, that people did survive here, that did exist here. I often find when you go and get pre-made dungeon maps, they'll forget about the privy, about the toilet, and so it's always fun for me. One of the first things I do when I check for pre-made maps is, how lived in is this place? Or are they just expecting people to go out and go on a tree like an animal? Now, when I made these traps, I kind of came up with them on the fly. I got them from a series called Grimtooth's Traps. You can find them on Drive-Thru-RPG, and again, I'll include links to the publisher in the show notes. I really like this book series when it comes to maps, because they don't just say it's a DC 16 dexterity save to avoid getting shot by an arrow. They're really imaginative in the way that they describe the traps. It's a real mechanical description of ways that they can hurt players. So they're a lot more involved, and you can in some ways describe the tracking mechanism to players, and they might not understand that. So in this case, I had the garrote, the razor thin wire that was set at a height above what dwarves would need to worry about, in intention to catch out other races that weren't invited. They then went into the lightning laboratory, the weapon laboratory, and so Again, stealing everything. I wanted the room to look as normal as possible, and then to have automatons, really the only thing that could have potentially survived in the mist, burst out of these closets and start doing their thing. If anyone's played Skyrim and you've gone down into the Drogo caves and seen have them pop out of crypts and things like that, this scene should be instantly recognizable. And again, just feel free to steal everything like that. It made all the players drop their guard, think everything was nice and normal. Nobody thought to check those closets, and they were ambushed. As for the records that were destroyed, I was going to let them be some kind of backup plans. I hadn't decided what they were at the time. Put simply, if they had have been left intact and the players had managed to find the 2 potential pieces of treasure in that cave, then a motive may just then be basically a copy of something that they already had. But if they'd gotten the lightning cannon and managed to retrieve the plans without getting to the further lab down the track, then there would have been plans for what was in that lab, which would have been some kind of defense mechanism. I haven't decided if I'm going to be putting that back in yet or not, so we'll see how we go. But instead, they let the plans get destroyed, which means that the only thing that it could walk out with was the lightning cannon, and giving Danny that chance to grab it on the way out. If you've played games like Forged in the Dark, they'll have a timer on how long it is until things happen. Like I said, we had the environmental effect of the mist going on. When I use that, I tend to just tie it into negative rolls. So if somebody's rolling to pick a lock, for example, they will then a fail doesn't mean they can't pick the lock. It just means that it takes a lot longer, and so the timer for the mist surrounding them creeps forward a little bit more. So just kind of, again, keep that in mind when you're going through all of that. Now, the other thing as well, so there was a door where I wanted to give it a 50-50 chance of setting off this trap, or she could have investigated more, but she didn't. The idea behind the door trap, where I asked if she wanted to turn the handle left or right, put simply, if she'd chosen left, which my coin flipper decided was the wrong way, the door would have shot forward and slammed them across into the wall behind them. A perception check, and this is what I mean by the descriptions that come from Grimtooths, would have revealed that there were cracks on that particular wall, far more than what would have been normal, sort of shown that something hits that side of the wall fairly often. Now, in terms of other traps, like I said, I like having door traps in a short space like this, but pit traps, corridor traps, they're all available to you in these books. Now, when they left the dungeon, they continued on to the capital, where they have this amazing moment, well, to me anyway, where they find the bakery and it's got this very suspicious connection to Mr. Whitber. It had been pretty obvious, at least to me, that Connor was trying in some way to slow down the group, but the players hadn't picked up on it yet. But I decided after 2 weeks of that happening, then it should be fairly obvious to anyone who's even slightly observant that he's trying to hold them back. So that's why I worded the question, how are you doing this? If anyone's ever played Savage Worlds as a system, they often include interludes as a way for players to have a bit of a story during those kind of downtime moments. Stealing everything, I introduced that mechanic into this, but it's asking them questions. There's no benefit to the players outside of role-playing, but it just is a way to have those blanks filled without needing to roll, without needing to mechanize it. It's just a fun little RP moment. How did you slow us down? How did you almost break the ship? How did you punish your players for that? Things like that. I really recommend including them in your groups, because it just lets the players, again, highlight the personality of their characters in a way that doesn't cost much, doesn't add or detract too much to the story. It just is. Now, when we had the bakery come up, That's obviously owned by Mr. Whitbeer's brothers. That came out of a conversation about his backstory. I asked him what was the name of the bakery, and what would the signage look like. And so he described that it was going to be the two brothers, and I said, well, let's draw the mystery out a little bit more. Let's have the part of the signage that's you be overwritten by a terrible drawing of a dragon, and maybe eventually down the track we'll see it look like the two brothers together on the signage, and that's why the dragon looks like a badly taxidermied otter, which I recognise might just be a thing known to people down here in Melbourne, Australia. Basically, the Melbourne Museum used to have an enormous taxidermy section, and one of the things that was very well known from that was a terribly taxidermied sea otter that looked like it was just so sad. It was incredible. And unfortunately, that taxidermied section has now left, but if you look online for terrible taxidermied otter, I'm sure you can find pictures of this creature. And the reason why this picture looks so bad at the moment in the game is because it has been painted over. This dragon is painted over Mr. Whitbeer. I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you guys learned something. I'm sorry for a bit of background noise, but my dogs wandered in while I was recording. But I hope you have a good night. Talk soon.